Thanks everyone for being here, and for those of you watching on the live stream, thank you for joining this session. My name is Ray. I'm a developer advocate for Google Cloud Platform.
And I'm Hadi, a developer advocate at JetBrains.
And today we're going to talk a little bit about writing mobile applications and especially the backend. And I know a lot of you are probably writing mobile apps today, and you're probably aware with you know how to use Kotlin, or you're learning to use Kotlin. And then what about once you have the front end? What about the backends, right? And today's what we're going to talk about. We're going to show a little bit about the different frameworks that you can use, specifically Spring Boot and Ktor. And we're going to see how we can actually deploy this onto Google Cloud Platform by using App Engine and a few other things.
So for this, we've got this amazing, awesome Android application that neither Ray nor I wrote, because we both completely suck at Android development. It was written by Seb. Raise your hands. So if anything goes wrong, it's also his fault. And basically what it is just an uploader, so you can upload your images, and then you can do list them and do some sharing and black and white filtering. And that's what we're going to show you how to develop on the backend side of it.
Right. And that's pretty much all we have for today and for the slides. And we're going to try to code everything in the next 40 minutes or so. How many people would think that we can actually do this? Wow, nobody. Oh, a few people. Wow, thank you. All right, let's get started. So there's
faith. Huh?
Yeah, so we're going to get started. So the first thing that I'm going to do is to write a backend using Spring Boot, OK? And we're going to implement probably half of these functionalities. And one of the easiest way to get started is actually go to start.spring.io. And this will help you bootstrap your service or your application in the backend. And how many people here use Gradle? Gradle? Yeah, just about everyone. Maven? There's a few, that's nice, right? So I actually use Maven a lot, so I'm going to use the Maven project, but you can choose. But I think we can all agree on that we're going to use Kotlin for the language here. If you scroll down a little bit, you can choose some of the metadata here, like the package name and stuff like that. But most importantly, I need to make sure that this has the right packaging format. For our demo today, we're going to deploy a WAR file for the web application. But in the future, you can also deploy a jar file as well. If I scroll down even a little bit more, this is the important part where we can pick and choose the capabilities I want to add to my application. So for example, I already added the web dependency because I need to be able to respond to an HTTP request. I'm going to use some of the Google Cloud services, and so I'm going to add GCP support. I'm going to cut down on some of the boilerplate code that otherwise you may have to write for your backend. So I added this REST repository, which I'm going to show in a minute. Okay? And from here, you can generate a new project. It will be a zip file. You can just download it, and you can unpack it, and you can open this up in your IDE. Okay? So this is a fresh new project which I just created, and I'm going to open this up. And there we go. And I'm going to just make sure that I can synchronize this directory a little bit so I can get the latest file. If I scroll down here, I can actually open up the Kotlin application. And for Spring Boot, it's a very popular framework that people use for the backend today. And this is all it takes. Like all of these lines of code is all it takes for you to start a web server that can handle some requests. So for example, if I want to handle a request that says hello, the first thing I do is to create a class. That would be something like hello world controller, like that. Okay? And then you can create a function here, say hello. Oh, fun, hello. And then maybe I'm taking a name via the request parameter. That's a string, and it's going to be equal to hello with a name. And I can annotate this with hello REST controller. And then for the function, I need to listen on a get method. So I can use get mapping and listen to the hello URI. And that is all I need to do to create an endpoint that responds to the /hello. Now, for this application, though, we need to do a lot more than just saying hello world. We need CRUD operations. We need something that's RESTful. So typically what people do then is to go ahead and implement, and using the controllers, using these mapping annotations, you implement the rest of the API. So for example, you need post to create a new object. You need to use get to retrieve the list of photos, delete and put for the updating and deletion, right? And there's a lot of to-dos you may have to use to add to your application, and these are some boilerplate code. Now, in Spring, what is really, really cool is that they have a project called Spring Data, and this allows you to add object mappings to your data class. So in our case, we have a data class here called photo that has all the attributes I want to store in a database. And what I can do is to go to my dependencies here, and I can actually just add a dependency here for our data store. So you can use object mapping to SQL databases in the backend or in the MongoDB, or in my case, I'm going to use Cloud Data Store, which is just a no SQL data store, a document-oriented data store that you can use on Google Cloud Platform. And once you have added this dependency, in the data class, all you need to do is to say annotate it with entity annotation, so that we tell Spring that this data class can be stored in the backend database somewhere. And for the ID, I'm going to mark it as a primary key by using the ID annotation, and just like that. Okay? So now Spring understands this data class. The next thing that we need to do is to implement some of the CRUD operations. Rather than implementing all of the operations ourselves, we're just going to define an interface. I'm going to call it photo repository, like that. And it's going to go ahead and extend something called the paging and sorting repository for the type of photo. That's the domain type. And the key type is a string. And just like that, the Spring framework will automatically implement the CRUD operations for you. So now I can actually save data, I can retrieve data. We're going to go even a step further. We're going to put this as a RESTful resource as well. And this will also expose the CRUD operation as RESTful resources I can hit from my endpoint. I'm going to go ahead and run it and see this up and running. So in my ID, I'm going to just say run my application. And Spring Boot should start up in about 5 seconds or so. There we go. And this is ready to handle some requests. It's listening on port 8080. And from here on out, I can just go ahead and say I can make some requests, right? And the easy way for me to do it, I can use curl, I can use wget. But I'm just going to create a new file. I'm going to call this request HTTP. And I can just go ahead and make a get request. So I can go ahead and say hello to myself. And I'm going to say hello, name is equal to Ray. And let's run it. And there we go. We can see hello Ray, right? And we can go and test out our repository in the backend as well. For this one, I'm going to go ahead and say port 8080. I'm going to see if I can find a list of photos. Now, my laptop's already authenticated with Google Cloud. And so when I'm doing this operation, it actually connected to the data store. And I can clearly see I have no photo data entry here, right? So we can go ahead and just try to post something. So I'm going to say PTR. Let's post a JSON entry here. So I'm going to say post to 8080 to photos. I'm going to say the ID is, I'm just going to make something up, 123. And maybe URI is hello, something, whatever, that we can add. And let's go ahead and post it. And we can see clearly that this post operation also went through. And not only that, we also got a URL back. And this is the unique URL that Spring already implemented for us. And we can, for example, we can go ahead and get it as well. And we can see the details. All of these things are already stored in the data store database. Okay, so for example, I can go ahead and go to my Google Cloud Console. I can go to data store right here. And I can see all of the entities that I have already created. In our case, we have photo. And that is the entry I just posted. I can, of course, delete it as well. So I can do that from here, from the console if I want to. And there it goes. Okay? But we need to do a little bit more than just CRUD operations on a RESTful resource. We need to be able to upload a file. Because remember, we have to upload a photo. Now, where would you actually store the photo? You can actually store that, typically what people do is maybe store them on a disk. On Google Cloud, we have something called Google Cloud Storage. And with Google Cloud Storage, you can store your binary blobs, so whether it's audio, video, photos, or whatever. And you don't have to store that on your disk. You can just push it to the service, and you don't have to worry about the space that you're going to be using, because we will take care of that for you. And so in our browser here, I can see clearly I have a Google Cloud Storage bucket. This is the top-level directory. If I go into it, I have a demo directory. And from here, this is where I'm going to put the photo that we're going to upload. And because of this, I'm going to go ahead and add a little prefix here in my controller. So this is where I'm going to store my photos. And I'm going to just create an upload handler here for uploading the photo. Right? So in this case, I'm going to handle a post method on /upload. And I'm going to go ahead and try to store the file that we are going to get from the parameter. And the way I'm going to do it is because we have integration with the Spring ecosystem, what we can do is to just grab what we call application context. And this is something that Spring will automatically inject into your constructor if you declare it. And from this context, we can go ahead and create a resource where we can say application context get resource and use the prefix and the ID as the file name. And this reference now points to the file that may or may not exist. Okay? And from here, from the resource, we can just go ahead and write our data into it. So from the output stream, I'm going to use it, and I'm going to do the write. here we go, write. And write from the bytes from the file. And that is all I need to do to upload a file in my Google Cloud Storage environment. Okay? And finally, we're going to add this piece of metadata into our data store as well. So I'm going to just use the photo repository that I created earlier. And again, we can use dependency injection just by adding the photo repository here. And we can say photo repository.save the photo item here, and the ID is equal to the ID we pass in, and the URI that you can use to retrieve the photo, I'm going to say image/ID. And that is how you can implement a post method that can handle upload of a file. We need to also retrieve the file. So for this one, I already wrote it out. So basically, I have a URI mapping here for image. And you can see the ID here is in part of the path. And we just use annotation here to link and say that this variable is actually coming from the path. And similarly, we can do the deletion as well. And as you can see, rather than writing a lot of the boilerplate code, we're just using these integrations to do the deletions, and I can delete the data as well. Okay? So with that, I'm going to go ahead and deploy this into a production environment. Now, usually you want to try this out in a local environment first, but we don't have a lot of time. So we're going to go ahead and deploy this into Google App Engine. App Engine is just a platform as a service that you can use to run your production app. And we can actually run your Kotlin application and Kotlin services as well. The easiest way for you to deploy this app is by using our IDE plugin called Cloud Code. So from this IDE, you can go ahead and add the App Engine support into your project. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and select it. And this will just add the support for the IDE, and also add a file called the appengineweb.xml. I'm going to open this up a little bit and show you what you can do here. So this is where you configure the deployment runtime environment. So we are using the runtime here, where by default, it's going to give you a pretty small instance that you can run a small application. But for us, we're going to increase the instance class size, so we have a bigger instance size, so we have more memory that we can use. And also by default, it's going to use automatically scaling. What that means is that if no one's using your application, it's going to downscale your app instances to 0, so you don't have to pay for it. If somebody makes a request, we're going to spin up the instance for you automatically. If your application is very popular, then we'll spin up even more instances for you. For my demo, I'm just going to go ahead and use the manual scaling here so that I always know I have 2 instances running at any given time, right? So this is pretty much ready to deploy. But I'm also going to just add a little filter here for my own for my application. So what I just added is just a little filter here that's going to be looking for some secret headers that we're going to pass along so that our application can communicate with us. Okay? So it's almost ready to deploy. And in the IDE, we can also go ahead and just get the configuration here. And we can configure the Google App Engine deployment. And I'm just going to add one. Oh, I think there's one here already. So we can pick and choose the application we want to deploy. And then we can pick and choose the Google Cloud project that we want to deploy to. And we have a demo project here that I'm going to select. And then if I go down even a little bit more, we should be able to see the promotion, like what version we want to use. So I'm going to go ahead and apply it. I'm going to say OK. And now I'm ready to deploy. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and run this deployment. Remember what's going to happen behind the scenes? It's going to compile my Kotlin application. It's going to create this WAR package. It's going to upload everything into Google Cloud. Okay? And it's also going to give you a URL that you can actually use. Okay? And very quickly, we should be able to see this application up and running. Now, I'm going to go back to my console just to show you this service that we have created. So this is the console where I have the new service I created. And I will have a version that I just created as well. And as you can see here, the traffic is not actually going through to this new version because I was not able to check the checkbox for promotion. But now I know that this is deploying. I'm going to migrate all the traffic to this new version as well. Okay? So now we're going to shift all the traffic from something that doesn't respond to any request, and I'm going to shift it to this new application I just wrote that I hope is going to start and work. And let's take a quick look, okay? So I should be able to go to this new application. And, oh, nice. I think this is working. So I should be able to say hello to myself. There we go. So I just wrote this, and this is actually up and running. If I go back to the Android app now, remember, the Android app is using retrofit to talk to the backend right now. And if everything's working fine, I should be able to go ahead and find one of the photos, and maybe we can upload it. And remember, it goes into the /upload handler, and very quickly, it should return, and we should be able to see this picture. OK, upload complete. And oh, let me see here. Just make sure this is still there. Yeah, there it is. And we are able to upload our photo. Pretty cool, right? So,
yes.
Yeah. So for the next part, Hadi is going to show you a little bit about how to write this in Ktor.
Yes, and I'll probably try and talk a little bit slower.
OK, yeah.
OK. So, yeah, so Ktor is, how many of you have heard of Ktor? Oh, wow, cool. So Ktor is a connected system application for writing. It doesn't say it there, but I'll say microservices, because then everybody likes it. Microservices using blockchain. No, there's no blockchain, but it'll sound nice as well. And AI. There's no AI either, but it'll be cool. So this is, essentially, Ktor is a multi-platform library framework that allows you to write server-side and client-side applications. OK? So what I'm going to show you today is how you can do server-side application, and it's built from the ground up with Kotlin using coroutines as well. Similar to start.spring.io, we have start.ktor.io, which has, again, similar functionality. So you can select whether it's a Gradle or Maven project, the different features you want, etc. But I'm going to show you that you can do this also in the IDE. So I can say new project. Here I'll select Ktor. I'll say that I want some static content. That's going to ask me for some information. I can even add a Swagger model if I want there, and go ahead and finish that. And now I'll select auto import and OK. And now I've got my Ktor application imported into IntelliJ. And essentially, you can see that it's created a single file, which is where my application starts, right? So in this case, and I'll explain this in a second, but basically, I'm responding to a hello world, and I'm responding to some static resources. So if we go ahead and run this, this will essentially start up Ktor. And one cool thing about Ktor you'll see is that the actually start time is significantly faster than some other technology, which I'm not going to mention, that someone was showing. So I already have this Ktor application running, and you can see that I have hello world there. OK? Now, let's switch back to our actual application, and let me show you a little bit how this works. So first of all, you've got your application routing. Now, if you look at the demo, what I'm doing here is essentially I'm putting all of my different routes inside of a table, which is called the routing table. Now, this is great for demos, but it doesn't actually scale that well if you're doing a real-world application, right? You can't have everything in one file unless you're doing JavaScript, right? So here, what I want to do is, no disrespect to JavaScript. What I want to do here is try and separate things out. So for instance, I can do a home function, and then I can have a file called home here, where I actually write everything that has to do with my home routing, etc. And you don't need to use functions. You can actually use classes if you want as well. That's the flexibility of Ktor. So whereas with Spring, you have to map basically your controller to these routes, with Ktor, you can use functions, or you can just use classes however you want. So I'm going to write a function. Now, this could be any function. But since we're Kotlin, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an extension function on route. And what that gives me access to some of the features of actual Ktor. So here I can now do get, and then I'll say the get the home path, and I'll do something like call, respond, text, and hello, right? So this is basically going to respond with hello from my actual route. So you can see that if I run this, and notice that when I'm running it, I'm using this little line here, which is allowing me to run this locally using Jetty and remotely using a different deployment engine. So that's one of the cool things with Ktor as well, that you can actually run something locally with one engine and remotely with another. So you can deploy with Netty, run locally with Jetty. And I can pass different configuration files. It's using Hocon format for configurations. So you can see that I have my application config, which is what I ship when I want to deploy. But for debug, I actually indicate that I want to set a specific port, etc. So let's go ahead and run this. And you can see that I've got my application now running locally, responding to the actual endpoint. So you can see that it's running here, and it's not running because I've got another application running, which I should be stopping this. OK, so now it should be able to run. OK, so now I launch this, and I've got my hello world there. OK, now let's go ahead and develop some of those things that we were talking about. So first thing I want to do is implement that button that converts to monochrome. So look how fast I type. OK, so there is our monochrome thing. Now, I was way faster than you, my friend.
Way faster.
Way faster. So here what I'm doing is exactly the same thing as we saw before, but in this case, it's a put, OK? So I'm loading the image with call parameters, and then I'm doing call load from storage. Now, call is part of Ktor, but load from storage is actually a Google Cloud function. Okay, but again, we're dealing with Kotlin, so I can implement an extension function that actually talks to cloud storage and integrate that as part of my application call, which is the response request that Ktor deals with. So I load this from storage. This is going to give me back a result. I'm a good boy here because I'm basically analyzing a success and a failure. I'm going to then convert it to monochrome, which is a really, really bad implementation of converting to monochrome. And then I'm going to save to storage. If everything is OK, I'll hit OK. If something goes wrong, what do? We always throw internal server error 500. It doesn't matter what it is, just a 500 is absolutely OK. And then you can actually point to the real message with a text. OK, so that is a joke, by the way. I'm being sarcastic. So internal server error, and now I go ahead and run this. Now, this is nice. I could actually deploy this, and it probably might work, yeah.
I hope so.
But the problem is that here, notice that I've got this like mono/ID, and then I've got this ID, and this is essentially text. And if I want to rename this, route, this is kind of like problematic, right? Because I've got to look for search for text. I mean, if you're using IntelliJ, I'll probably fix it for you. But let's try and do this in a better way. And what we can do is implement this location functionality that comes with Ktor, which basically I can say that search for location, and I'm going to create a class called mono that has a single parameter, which is ID. And then what I'm going to do is, instead of using this format of put, I'm going to use put, a generic type of put, which is mono. OK? So that's going to import the correct mono, which is location. And then instead of using call parameters, what I can do is actually, this is a lambda, so I can pass the strongly typed parameter to my function, which is all of the parameters that are part of the route. So here, I actually need to define the route properly, so it would be ID. So here I would do ID, and then instead of doing this call parameters like that, I can just access it via ID. Now, in this case, it would be, this would be mono.id, and this would be mono.id, OK? Sorry, mono, and then mono.id. Now, if you're familiar with Kotlin, you know that if lambda takes a single parameter, I don't have to be explicit with it, so I could actually remove this and just refer to this as it. Okay? So this gives me it.id, and now I have access to my route in a strong way. So I have access to the parameters. I don't need to do any conversions or anything like that. And this will actually work. If I deploy this, this will work. But the problem here is that this is kind of slow. I know because I implemented it. And if this is running very long, Ktor will try and prevent your thread requests from blocking. However, it is recommended that you offload this to another coroutine. Okay? So essentially what I would do here is go ahead and write with context, and then dispatchers.io. It has nothing to do with this conference. Okay, that was not funny? No? No? OK. So now what I'm doing is I'm putting this into the dispatchers.io, which is really cool, because now it's going off into another thread. It's not blocking any potential requests coming in. And I don't have to worry about safely putting things back, because with coroutines, I can just dump and access whatever I want, where I want. OK? And this will now convert an image to monochrome. Now, before we deploy, let me show you some other things that you can do with Ktor. So here is a t-share. OK, so what this is, not a t-share, a share. And what this is doing is essentially allowing me to share an image. So when I click on the share button, it's going to give me a URL that I can then paste and send to someone, and it will share it. And what I'm going to show you here is how Ktor can actually send back HTML as well. Now, of course, I could do something like HTML like this in string, but that isn't cool. What we can do is combine this with Kotlin X HTML. So I could, in fact, write body, and then here write, for example, h1, and then write the lambda, and then say, for example, hello, look at this image, and then let's do a BR, and then let's do, for example, the actual image that is showing the image. Okay, so I'm integrating very nicely the Kotlin X HTML library with Ktor, works very nicely, and you can just basically send back HTML. Now, before we deploy this, one thing that we've got to be aware of is we need to add this to our routing table. So if I go back to main, I have to come here and write convert to monochrome, and I have to also do the share. So I've now added this to my table, and then I should be able to just deploy to App Engine. Here, I'm going to say promote this to the next version, select, really? Seriously?
You have to log in first.
Everything is awesome, and everything is broken. Can we sing that? No? We can't allow. Du-du-du-dum, du-du-du-dum. Yes, go ahead. Ba-da-dum. There you go. I can't complain that this isn't my machine, because it isn't my machine. So I've deployed this, and now it is successfully deployed. It's uploaded. It's already started, and you're still deploying your Spring, right?
No, mine was already working.
Oh, but has it started?
Oh, it's always starting.
It's always starting.
I have manual scaling.
OK.
Yeah.
Manual scaling. So this is done, sending a traffic split for service. So now I can basically access my endpoint, but instead of accessing it like that, let me go to my Android application that Seb wrote. And remember, if anything goes wrong here, it's his fault. So we've got our images here, and I can click on my image over here, and I can. This is the moment of truth. Convert to monochrome. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on.
So, ooh, come on. So this first request might be a little slow because you have automatic scaling, right? So we're actually starting a brand new instance for you behind the scenes.
I also put error while hipstering image.
Hipster? What does that mean?
What does that mean? I think hipsters make their images monochrome.
Oh,
We've
I
been
see.
waiting for
Yeah.
so long.
That's
OK, so we can actually switch over to the
yeah.
thingy.
What happened?
Yes. Switch over to, can we switch over to Ray's machine?
Yep.
OK. So tell me what's gone wrong, man.
Well, let's see what did you actually deploy. So what is pretty cool here is that you can see we actually deployed 2 different services. So his application did not overwrite my service, right? So you can specify the different names for your applications so they don't overwrite each other. So default is the one I deployed that's using Spring Boot. And the Ktor one is the one that he deployed using Ktor, of course. And if I go in here, I can see the different versions that we have. And this is the latest version that he deployed. And that's the previous version. That should ideally work.
That should ideally work.
So we can fix this, for example, by simply shifting the traffic and migrate it to the version that works, and that will take care of it. But I'm kind of interested to see what is going on behind the scenes. So for that matter, we can go into the diagnosis tools, and I can go ahead and see, we can do a few things. We can debug the code live, or we can see the log. I'm going to show you log for now. So let me see if I can get any log messages. Oh, check it out. So we actually do have a put here with the 200. So it actually kind of went through. And then we have a mono, right? And we can see some log messages here. It looks like it might be OK. So let me see here. I'm going to go ahead and do a refresh. And oh, actually, you know what? It did actually go
There
through.
you go. You see, it was Seb's fault.
Yeah. Something on the front end.
Yeah, but so we actually planned that so that we show you the error logs, really, right?
Yeah.
OK,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, sure.
So there you go. So we're going to switch back over to my machine, please.
Yep, back to
That's me, Hadi. Yes, there you go. So they don't know who Mai is. So the last thing that we're going to do is opening up this application again. Where's my application? We also have the share. So basically, this copies it over to my browser, and I can come here, and I can paste that into my browser, and you say, hello, look at this image. OK? So you get the share with the HTML as well. It's OK. You can clap. It's OK. I know that you want to clap. So we've got that. Now, it's over to you.
Yeah. So wait a second, though. Let's switch back to my machine again. I'm going to show this application very quickly. Now, Hadi, check this out. When I open up this picture, which I took, check it out. There's a little label underneath here that says wood, because that's the material, I guess, I was used to make this thing. If I click into this other picture, it's got insects, right?
Don't tell me that you're going to add artificial intelligence to this talk.
It's already there.
Oh my God, this is so cool.
It's already there, right? So
Yes.
I can actually, this one.
You can't have a talk without AI. right? You have to have ML and AI.
That's right. So I'm going to upload one of my favorite picture. It's a really cute dog. It's not my dog, by the way. I wish it is. But if I go in there, it's actually a pug. So where did that actually come from? You saw me write the code. I can guarantee you that everything I just wrote was live. That application did not write the label into this artifact. So what happened behind the scenes is I actually deployed this other thing way before the talk, and it's called a function. In Google Cloud, we have Cloud Function, so you can actually write a very small snippet of code, and you can respond to events. The event can be coming from HTTP, or it can be coming from things like Google Cloud Storage, so that when you upload a picture or any of the files, we can trigger this function as well. If you are using Firestore or some other things that we have, you can also receive notifications when you make changes. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my IDE, and I actually open up the function right here. So this is a function that's written with Kotlin, right? And function can run this code just fine. And one thing you have to watch out for is that you do need to actually create a class, and then you wrap the actual function inside of the class. That's because we actually need to instantiate the class for you so that we can initialize some of the client libraries that you may actually have to use. And this function is going to take in an event, right? So for example, if it's HTTP, we're going to have some kind of HTTP request and response. In our case, we're going to respond to a Google Cloud Storage event, which is a well-defined schema that you can read the documentation for. But it actually definitely have these two fields in there. It's really a JSON format, and we're going to serialize it for you into your data class as well. So in this function, we have apply vision label that's going to receive the event that has the bucket and also the file name that's being changed. And we basically just use a Cloud Vision API to read this file and see what's actually inside. And so here we are actually doing a feature label detection. We're going to only get the maximum of 3 results. And then for the labels, we're going to just iterate through the actual result list. We're going to sort by descending by the score, and then we're going to map it to the description. And finally, we're going to add it as a delimited list, just a string that's delimited by a comma. And this is all happening behind the scenes and synchronously. The way that you would deploy this function is pretty straightforward. Actually, if I go to here, actually, you know what? I'm going to open the README here, so it's a little bit easy to read. So if I want to deploy the function, I can just say gcloud function, gcloud CLI. You can say gcloud function deploy, and then give it the name of the project, and also the entry point, which is the class name, and also the method name. And then you can specify the event trigger that you want to listen to. So for our case, we're listening to the Google Cloud Storage object event trigger. Okay? And that is how we then run the Vision API, and then we update the label. And of course, if I go to my console here, let me go back to my IDE. Okay? Or actually, you know what? I'm going to go here. And if I go back to my application, my App Engine application, if I go back to the service that I have just deployed in default, there you go. Let me open this up. And let me just open up the Photos endpoint, because I remember this is where Spring implemented all the CRUD access for me. And I can see very clearly, even though I just wrote the URI, my function actually wrote the label for me.
That is one ugly JSON.
What do you mean?
It's ugly. It's got underline and that. I've got much better JSON for you. Open up my app. And notice that we've got 2 different apps, right? We've got the Spring and we've got the Ktor. Go to my app.
Okay, I see hello.
But it's got more. Okay, /data /all. Okay. Now that's some nice looking JSON.
Is it?
Oh.
Hadi, I think you have a way of crashing the system with JSONs.
You're going to bring up the JSON thing now, right?
Didn't it not work today in the morning either?
Thank you. So what's going on there? Open up the panel.
Another 500 error here. Let's take a quick look. So we kind of already saw you can go in and see the log. Let me show you something else here. So we can, all the requests that's coming through App Engine, it's automatically going through the trace. So we can actually go here and see the list of requests. So every dot here is a request that's going through. And we can filter it by the request that, based on the HTTP status, for example. So we can see, look, there's your request.
OK, fine, OK.
That actually failed, right? And if I scroll down a little bit, we can also see the log as well. So if there's correlation, when we open up this view log, we should be able to see the log message that's associated with this particular request. And look, it actually found this entry, which is pretty cool. And we can see the 500 error, right? If I scroll down even a little bit more, Oh, Hadi, you have an exception here.
Oh, OK. So
What is
I
this?
know what that means. So let's switch over to my screen, and I'll tell you what the problem there is.
You're going to fix that?
Yeah, I'm
all right.
right? OK, so this is the actual endpoint that he called. And what we see here is another feature of Ktor that we're using, which is nested routing, right? So here, before where we were seeing just like a get and the path, you can actually have even nested routes in Ktor. So I define a route and then /all. And in this case, all I'm doing is querying the data store and then saying call respond. Now, this is automatically serializing this to JSON. The problem is, as the log shows, is that I forgot to tell Ktor that I want the JSON content negotiation feature. And the way that you do that is that you come to your application and you say install content negotiation, and then the content negotiation has support for different types of serializers. So I could say, for instance, JSON, and then JSON has its own set of parameters, right? So I could say pretty printer, set pretty printing, right? And because this is JSON, it knows exactly what JSON has. So we have support for JSON and Jackson, etc. And that's what the problem was. I was not telling Ktor how to do the actual serialization. And now, basically, if we deploy this again, and I'm going to stop that because we need to promote it. So we're going to deploy, and it's killing me. So you can promote that directly.
Okay, yeah, sure.
But anyway, that should be promoted now. And I didn't promote it at the latest version. He's going to now do it from the console. So while he's doing that, I can switch over. And in principle, this is still giving the 500 error until he promotes the new version from the console. And then I'll have the new version showing here, and we should be good. Promoted?
Not yet. I think your deployment operation is still not quite finished.
Oh, yes. It's still deploying.
Are you connected to the internet? Yeah, OK, yeah, you are.
Yes.
OK. So yeah, so basically, because he was doing the deployment, we cannot do a simultaneous operation here from the console. So now it should be migrating. So on my machine, I'm trying to migrate the traffic over. You probably saw that earlier. In addition to migrating traffic, we can also split traffic between two different versions of the app. And now it's migrated over.
OK, so you see that I didn't hit promote, and we did it from the console.
Yep.
So now switching over here, we should be able to see my JSON come back. And it doesn't matter even if it doesn't, because we're running out of time. So even if it gives a 500 error, everything is OK. And all my JSON failed today.
That's a record.
That's 2 JSONs.
Oh, there we go.
Beautiful,
all
right?
Great job.
So that's basically it. Switch back to the slides,
Switch
please.
back to my screen, please, so that we can close up. So you saw a lot. I mean, we went relatively quick. But we do have quite a few resources you should probably go visit. So for example, obviously the Kotlin pages, but also you can go to cloud.google.com/Kotlin. This is where you can learn a lot more about how you can actually write your Kotlin application and deploy it into Google App Engine. And we have some community tutorials and collabs you can follow. If you want to do even deeper integration with Spring, for example, we have a whole range of resources there. And finally, if you want to try Google Cloud Function, you can sign up for that. You do have to sign up because it's in alpha right now. And for Google App Engine, we do have a new version that's coming out where you can also get the alpha signed up today so that you can try and deploy a jar file instead of a WAR file. OK? So that is all we have today. And yeah, thank you all for being here. Thank you.